involved. Other times, if you have the procedure called an ablation, it might not fix it completely. So I've read that some people have to go back every few years and have multiple ablations. So the fact that I was in and out with just one, I was like, thank you, God.
Yeah. Did it change your outlook on life afterwards? Because it sounds like you had these symptoms and you were dealing with it for a period of months. It wasn't years and years. But it definitely, I would think that it would rattle you a little bit to go, okay, I got to change some things in my life. Is that possible?
Yeah, but yes and no. Because it wasn't circulation-wise, it wasn't the result of diabetes or overweight or something like that. So it's not like I had to work on that. But I just really kept with a gratitude. So I started doing a gratitude list every night and a forgiveness list every night. I journal. I had already been a journaler because I'm a writer, so I journal a lot. And that helped me process the anxiety of going through the symptoms and the anxiety, leading up to the procedure. So I continue to do that every day, actually. Forgiveness list, grateful list, journaling. Those are all daily practices.
Yeah. Well, I go to a mentoring coach. His name is David Metzler. He's here in Orange County. He's Sports One Marketing.
I know him. He's a great guy.
Great guy. He talks about, and I love this because when you talk about journaling, he talks about more than enough. And it's great to journal each day, writing down the things that we have more than enough of, right? And
Absolutely.
I don't think we realize how special that can be and what we have.
Well, that dovetails with another concept you're probably familiar with, which is the law of attraction. And when you put your mind on something, that's what you attract. So if you're always putting your mind on more than enough, which is abundance, you're going to get more of the same.
Yeah, I keep thinking about ATMs. Well, thank you for sharing your medical history with us, because I certainly think that there's people listening that are dealing with something that maybe this will help encourage them to go take care of whatever those issues are.
That's another lesson that I should have thought of that you just nailed, which is that day that it started, I should have gone right to an urgent care or right to the ER. I should not have probably just slept it off.
Yeah.
So if you have any symptoms, and I've read about this in terms of heart attacks for men and women, that if you think you're having a heart attack, don't ignore it. Don't try and drive yourself to the hospital. Call an ambulance. That's what they're for. And, because a heart attack could happen like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good advice. So you got that behind you now. Heart's working good again. It's not racing a million miles an hour. What was next for you on the business front?
So then the recession hit, and journalism took the second hit. The internet was the first hit for the whole entire industry of journalism.
Mm-hmm.
And the recession was just the second nail in the coffin. So I got laid off from that particular job, and that's when I turned to writing books. So I thought, if I can't work for a company as a journalist, how else can I use my writing skills?
Sure.
So I wrote and self-published my very first book, which is actually about healing as well.
And what's the title of that book?
That is called The Alchemy of Grief, and it's the story of Dr. Jack Miller.
Okay.
And after the heart procedure, in terms of being grateful, I had been so supported by the spiritual community that I was a part of that I decided to take classes for 2 years and get my license to become a spiritual counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And toward the end of those classes, Dr. Miller came to our center, and he works with people in hospice, people who are very close to death, and he's been doing this for most of his life. So I thought his own story was interesting in terms of his personal story and his life story. So I asked him if I could write a book about him, and he said yes.
Oh, wow.
So there's another yes in my life.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that seems like a major project to take on.
Yes and no again. I had always wanted to write a biography, and I had actually asked 2 other people beforehand who either didn't have the time to be interviewed or had other people they had in mind to write their biographies.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, the right person, it will happen, so just be patient. So when I asked him, not only did he say yes, but he had already started writing a sort of autobiography, and he had tons of notes, and he said, here, start with this.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, thank you.
Great. Wow.
That made it easier.
So how long did it take you to write the book?
It took probably about a year, and the irony is that as a spiritual healer, he travels around the country. He has his own program called the Phoenix Project, that if someone has suffered tremendous grief, either the loss of a spouse or a parent or a child, he will enlist them in his workshops and take them on this journey that's sort of based on the rites and rituals of Catholic Mass.
Mm-hmm.
So because he travels all the time, he gave up all of his possessions except for his cell phone.
Wow.
So we would do the editing back and forth on his cell phone, my computer and his cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
So I would send him drafts of each chapter, and when I got it back, it was like reading it in a vertical column. So the first thing I had to do is reformat it and then, integrate it. So that made it take a little longer, but it was all part of the process.
Yeah, sure. So I have a friend who's written a book, and I'm very proud of her for it. It was, one of those lifetime achievements. But now comes the other side of that. The book is written, it's published. Now what do you do, right? You don't want it to sit in your garage in a bunch of boxes. So, there's the business side of that too, right? I mean,
absolutely. And that was another learning experience. I self-published it, and I just promoted it mostly, among friends and family. So it depends what you want the ultimate, promotional process to be. If you want it to be a bestseller, then that's going to take a whole other tier of promotion.
Sure. So friends and family and people that wanted to get the message that you had written about.
Absolutely, yes.
And did you find that to be a successful method? I mean, I want to go and give her some advice. Actually, I hope she's listening.
What is the name of her book?
Her name is Jolynn, and I can't mention the title just yet. So, but I will talk about it on another show.
Well, I wish her the best. For me, I thought it was successful because he now brings up the book when he does the workshop. So every time I know when he's doing a workshop, even though I don't know where they are, because I see a surge in the sales of the book because he tells his the people that are doing it, and they start buying it. So
well, I think that was extra value for our money today because I didn't realize that you had written that book. I just think it's a fascinating experience to do that. I don't read a ton of books, but I keep every book that I read, and I have a lot of books in storage right now, and I can't seem to let go of them. For some reason, that I have this connectivity with these books, and my wife's like, do you really need all those books? And for some reason, I just can't let go. I mean, do you feel the same way?
You just warm my heart. That is so heartwarming because along with newspapers, you can maybe say the same thing about books that they're on the way out with Kindles and e-books. So that makes me so happy, and yes, I think absolutely you should keep them because you never know, first of all, if you might get the urge to read one of them or if you might want to pass them on to your children or other family members.
Well, see, that's how I look at it, so I continue to store them. It does stimulate some memory, though, when I look at that book or I see that binding on the shelf there. It's like, I remember where I was at in my life when I was reading that, whether I was on vacation, it was that type of book, out by the pool, or if it was a business book that I was reading each night before I went to sleep. It really does stimulate some of those memories for me.
Absolutely, and there's a tactile feel to them like there is to a newspaper, so the fabric and embossing of the cover might also, stir up a memory.
Yeah, interesting. So you wrote the books. Give us your next big yes, because I know that you've started a company. I know you worked for some big other companies. What was your next big yes?
So after I wrote that book, and then I wrote another biography about a businessman in Dana Point, I sort of got used to more freedom and autonomy. Because when you write your own book, you do everything. You write it, you edit it. For the most part, you proofread it, you publish it, and you promote it. So you're like a one-person band. So I sort of started getting the urge for more freedom and autonomy in my entire professional life. I love journalism. I will always be a journalist. But I started thinking, well, what can I do on my own? Should I maybe open a PR agency? Should I do freelancing? I was sort of marinating on this. And then I had the epiphany that I should focus on what I know. So I've been covering startups for the past 2 years for the Orange County Business Journal, which is a tremendously great place to work.
Yeah.
And I had met so many entrepreneurs that I was inspired by. And I thought, you know what? What if I just create a website and I just focus on startups? Because at the Business Journal, like most journalistic jobs I've had, you cover several beats. So I was also covering law and education, media, and nonprofits. So I can only give startups so much attention. So I said, yes, I'm going to start my own website. And I had no idea that I'd be starting a business as well. But
Of
I
course.
ended up starting my own LLC as well.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you that when I first received your message about being on the show and learning a little bit more about you, this intrigued me the most because the nature of the show is about saying yes to businesses and opportunities in your life. And the fact that you're somebody that actually covers startups, I thought that's some good connectivity there. Maybe one day somebody that starts something will be featured on your website or have some introduction to the world through what you're doing. So I was really interested about that. Can you tell us about the site and what it entails? I've gone through it a few times, and I just think that you've got a lot of content on there I was very impressed with.
Oh, thank you. Well, because I had established a network of resources and relationships throughout the 2 years I covered startups for the Business Journal, I was able to leverage that network, and everyone has been super supportive. So what they've told me is that, this didn't exist before, a one-stop clearinghouse for all startup news in Orange County. So there's news, there's updates. So if a company maybe hires someone or moves their office, that would be considered more of an update than breaking news.
Mm-hmm.
Also very important to me was giving entrepreneurs a voice, which I was not quite able to do when I was covering them in the column for the Business Journal. And that is manifested through question and answers, so Q&As, where I just email a source, maybe a CEO or an investor, a series of questions, and I let them respond to their own words. And then I only edit that for style and grammar.
Right.
I also have a section for opinion pieces. And what I'm trying to do with that is get a diverse sample of opinions of the OC startup ecosystem. So sort of a snapshot at this point in time. What do you consider the strengths and weaknesses to be? And what do you think will take it to the next level? Because Orange County, the startup ecosystem, is still young. It's very young compared to Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And a little maybe closer to Silicon Beach.
Right.
in LA.
I like that.
Yeah, or I think they call it Biotech Beach in San Diego. But to compete with the likes of Seattle or Boston or Austin, it definitely needs more venture capital investment. Mm-hmm. So I hear a lot of that, and I like getting the opinions of various people throughout the ecosystem.
Interesting. So what value are you looking for in a new startup business to be featuring them on your website? And this is information for people that are listening. Maybe they have a new business and they want to be listed on your website or have a story written about them or be interviewed. What are you looking for?
Well, I'm looking for a startup that's already launched, that has a business plan. A lot of the same things that investors are looking for.
Yeah.
So some entrepreneurs will reach out and say, I have a great concept. It's revolutionary. It's so disruptive. It's the first one ever. Those are buzzwords I hear all the time.
Of course.
Because everyone thinks theirs is the newest and the most disruptive. So you'll never see a story on my website that says it's the most disruptive or the most revolutionary.
Yeah.
So I tell them, when you launch, let me know. So I'm looking for, they've either launched, they've raised money, they're expanding, they're looking for money, things like that. That's the criteria I look for. Mm-hmm. But my bigger purpose is to elevate, the exposure of the ecosystem as we discussed.
Yeah, sure. And, it's interesting. I want to go back real quick to that business plan. I've had 3 shows air already. 2 of the 3 talk about business plans. And I've always told people when they ask me for advice, hey, I want to do this or that and start my own. And I always ask, well, have you written your business plan yet? No. Do I need that? That seems really hard. Well, yeah, it's really hard, but you're talking about your life and you're going to kick off this passionate idea that you have, right? Not enough people pay attention to the business plan.
You're so right. That's so true. And I think for me as a writer, it was a little easier because it's essentially an outline of your goals. And so I write outlines all the time for the books, especially for the biographies that I've written. So just to sit down, and it can just be one piece of paper with some bullet points. It doesn't have to be a manifesto.
Right.
It's just to get it on paper, and it can either be for yourself or to, when you're going to be pitching, we're going to need that to show investors.
Yeah, what's interesting, just to prove the strength of a business plan, and again, that is my first piece of advice to anybody that asks about starting a business is to write their business plan. And when I say start a business, whether that's writing a book or a podcast or an email, type of it, whatever it is, or maybe it's a restaurant, have a business plan, right?
Absolutely.
So when I started Azuñia Tequila, years ago. It was 2009 when I launched, but I started in 2008 writing a business plan.